Hey everybody, welcome to this week's Roundup. No special announcements or anything, so let's jump right in. First up, Crix has just released a new version of the Mega Everdrive, which is kind of like the Pro, but without Sega CD support. So it's going to get a bit confusing, and I'm going to try my best to put it all into perspective, so kind of stick with me on this one, or if you already have a Mega Everdrive Pro, just skip to the next section. So the Mega Everdrive Pro is a full-powered ROM cart for the Genesis or Mega Drive that could even emulate the Sega CD via the FPGA that's built into it. And it's really one of the go-to carts if you want every single option for an original Genesis or Mega Drive. And this version, called the Mega Everdrive Core, is essentially the same thing, but without Sega CD support. So it uses a slightly smaller FPGA that could handle everything but all of the Sega CD's hardware emulation over the FPGA. So that kind of makes sense, but then how does that differ from all of the other offerings? Because Crix also has the Mega Everdrive X3, X5, X7. Then he also recently released the OpenED, which is the open source, very, very basic, cheap ROM cart version. And then there was obviously the original ones before that. So I have a guess as to all of this. I haven't actually talked to Crix in a while, but my guess is that this is something similar to the RetroTink CE that takes an existing platform and just uses cheaper components to try to make it cheaper for the customer. So this one's going to come in at about $100, which is a lot cheaper than the Mega Everdrive Pro. So if you don't need Sega CD support, then this would be the go-to. But why have this when there's other ones out there? And Crix did post some comparison charts to the Everdrive X5, X7, etc. You could find them on social media, and there's one of them here in Alex's post. But essentially, I think, my guess is that the hardware that's in the X series is probably close-ish to end of life. So this is Crix just trying to continue support for his products moving forward. That's just a guess, though. I could be totally wrong, and maybe Crix just wants 7 different choices for an Everdrive, but I don't know. I don't think so. However, I would check all of these comparison charts to see which one is right for you. And if a couple months go by and all of them are still available, maybe one of us in the retro scene could put together a detailed video on which cart is right for your needs. But overall, I would personally just say that, get the best of the best or the cheapest, or find anyone in between that hits whatever needs that you have at the moment, and just kind of go through these different comparison charts to figure out what's best for you. But I'm happy to always see more options, and I hope that we could just get a little bit more clarity on the details. But basically, this is the Mega Everdrive Pro without Sega CD, so if you want all of that stuff, this one's for you. Check out Alex's post for more info, and I'll try to follow up in a bit and see what Crix's plans are for these products going forward. But as far as I'm concerned, they're all great, so just pick whichever one is the closest to fit all of your needs and budget. Next up is a fan-made update for the early 2000s game American McGee's Alice that includes a bunch of graphics updates, quality of life fixes, the ability to have high frame rate support, and fixes for widescreen modes, so everything should look correct on a 16:9 monitor. The only catch is that the way to install this one is on the game that came bundled with the game's sequel, Alice Madness Returns, not the original disc from 2000. So I'm sure anybody who's a fan of this game would be able to creatively find a way to get that version, even if you do own the original or something like that. But this is one of these things that's always very cool, because now you have a game that a whole bunch of people liked that could look a little bit more fitting of the times, and it was all done by fans who really enjoy this stuff. So please check out Donald's post for a ton of info and links, of course. And I enjoy seeing stuff like this, even if it's for games I wasn't super familiar with. It's really nice to see communities kind of pick up where the devs can't, because they have to move on to the next project and make this game into the modern era. Next up, Retro Remake have just opened pre-orders on their upcoming FPGA console that's supposed to also be compatible with Mr. And there's a whole bunch of stuff that you need to know about it, and there's probably going to be more questions than answers here, but I'll tell you everything that I know based on Lou's video and on what they have listed on their website, and hopefully we'll at least get you enough info to know if you want to pre-order it. First of all, the pre-orders are still open, and they're due to ship at the end of this year, so think in your mind like a year away, which I have no problem with, especially when companies do as they did and say right on their website that, ships quarter 2025 or earlier. So totally fair. They're being honest about that, which I always appreciate. The first the first run of pre-orders, I guess maybe the first day, first couple hours was 150. Now they've gone up to 180. I'm not really sure when the price switch happened, but the eventual price is going to be $225. And it looks like the PS1, so the PSONE, the mini PlayStation that was released in the 90s, and it looks just like that with controller ports in the front for PlayStation consoles, as well as ports for the memory card and some USB ports. It does not have a CD drive built in. We'll get to that in a second. But it also has ports in the back that are HDMI and analog video. So you basically have access to analog and digital outputs right from this one box without any kind of add-on accessories necessary. This is essentially going to be like a D10 and an I/O board all in one very neat looking little package. And some speculation here. My guess is that whoever's making Taki's boards basically just took their DE10 alternative that they made and their I/O board and made it onto one circuit board with everything routed around the edges for you to be able to get access to everything, and slapped it in a very nice looking case. So I think that's very awesome if that's what happened. And some more speculation. They claim that it's going to be compatible with the MiSTer architecture. And while it was designed to play the PlayStation core, you could just load whatever core you want. No jailbreak necessary. You just load them up. So my guess is that's how they're saying it's compatible with all of the MiSTer, is because it's just a reworked version of the DE10 with all the stuff built in, which is a compliment. I just want to be clear about that. I just want to make sure I'm clear about all of this. There is no indication that this is a different architecture where cores are going to have to be ported over. So that's kind of just what I'm speculating with all of this. So honestly, I pre-ordered one. I think it's got the potential to be pretty awesome. A year is a really long time, though, and a lot could change in a year. I mean, heck, last year I did that MiSTer video talking about direct video and the very complicated way to get the best analog video quality out. And then like 2 months later, Sorg had an option for that completely made all of that obsolete. So who knows what's going to happen in the next year. But if you want to spend your 200-ish bucks to pre-order something on this and hope that there are no other alternatives between now and then that you'd rather have, go for it. I bought it because I'm obviously a fan of this stuff, and I really want to make sure I stay up on all the best options for people. The only other thing to note is they do have a dock that they're talking about, which you could do a pre-order deposit, which means you only spend $5 on it, and when it is finished, then you'll have the option to pre-order it. But there really aren't many details on it. It's got a bunch of USB ports and a CD-ROM drive, but I don't think there's any details as to how the CDs work. Are they going to be offering ripping to a hard drive? Do they actually play games off of CDs? Is this something just kind of like Tap2, where you put the CD in, it reads the game ID and launches a game that you already have saved on your MiSTer? It's, there's a lot of questions about all of this stuff, but they're targeting a $40 price point for this, and I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Taki on social media has posted conflicting things forever, so I'm not really sure what to believe until you actually get one of these in your hands and see it, or until reviewers do. So fingers crossed that that all of this stuff works out. But honestly, even if it is a CD-ROM dock that just launches it Tap2 style, it looks neat, and maybe you want an external CD-ROM drive for your computer too. I don't know. I don't have any problem with that. I just kind of wish I knew what I just spent $5 to do a pre-order deposit on, other than a neat render. So, I'll leave all this stuff up to you, but I think it looks pretty cool, and I'm interested to see where this goes. Next up, the developer Sean, aka 3DO HD, has just released the first beta of a port of Mortal Kombat 2 Arcade over to the 3DO. And this is a pretty huge undertaking. I've been talking to Sean for a while and following all of his updates that he's posted, both sending to me and the stuff that he's kind of posted on the Discords here and there, and it looks absolutely awesome. I think, to be honest, I was talking to a couple of friends of mine about this, and we all think that if this was a game that was actually released on the 3DO with aiming to be as as faithful of a port to the arcade as possible, then if this was released in the 90s, this might have been a game changer for the 3DO. I don't know, maybe not, who knows, but it just looks absolutely awesome. Now, there are going to be bugs. There are a few things on there, like there's no fighter-specific fatalities in this version. Shang Tsung can only morph into one opponent, but there will be a complete version coming, and based on all of the work Sean's done from the start till now, it's absolutely progressing at a steady basis. So, this is something that if you have a 3DO and if you want to try this out, download it, understand what it is. This is not a complete port, but it looks awesome. And this is something that I just think Mortal Kombat and 3DO fans should be excited about, because this is one of those awesome looks at what could have been in the 90s. And I don't know, I think it looks really cool, and I'm very much looking forward to continue to seeing the progress of it. But yeah, I don't know. Thanks, Sean, for all your work, and 3DO fans, have at it. Next up, there's a new firmware update for the FlippyDrive optical drive emulator for the GameCube that cuts boot times in half, as well as adds support for the MemCardPro and adds the latest version of Swiss, as well as a couple of other updates that I posted right here if you're interested in them. Also, you could still pre-order one of these, and it should ship in the next batch coming in April of this year. So while everybody wants these things to have been in stock a year ago or whenever it was announced, they're selling a lot and it's hard to keep up with demand. But I personally think they're doing a good job, and they're really working hard to get this out to people. And I think they're aiming for a lot in April. I'm sorry if I'm getting this wrong, and this is more of a guess than anything else, but I think they're aiming to not only fulfill pre-orders by April, but have enough to hopefully have in stock so people could just buy them. Now, the FlippyDrive is awesome for a couple of reasons, but the main selling point of this points is that it seems like a very easy installation that most people with a little bit of patience could do. No soldering required or anything like that. And it retains the functionality of the original optical drive. So now you're able to install this in your console and be able to use both homebrew and backups, as well as original discs, which I am just a massive fan of, and I really, really wish we saw more stuff like this for different consoles. Looking at you, Dreamcast. But if you want more info on exactly what this could do and what the last set of updates were, please check out both of the videos from Tito from Macho Nacho Productions, as they give you every bit of info you need on the first look, the installation process, as well as all of the other cool stuff that was added since. So definitely check those out. They're obviously embedded right in the post for you, but yeah, I'm a big fan of stuff like this, and I think this is probably, at least once it's in stock for everybody to just buy, I think this is probably going to be the ODE to get. The price is right, the features are right, and installation is also right. So check out links if you're interested. Next up, another batch of pre-orders is about to open for the brand new vertically oriented shooter for the Neo Geo called Project Neon. We talked about this a couple times over the years, and I guess the first pre-order batch had shipped, and now this week, Thursday at 3 p.m. New York City time, they're going to be reopening a batch of pre-orders for the second batch that should start shipping in February. Now, there's a couple of things to note. I also have quite a lot of questions about this, but I guess right now, if you go to their product pages, you could have it notify you when available, or just go back at that time to refresh. But there's no price listed. There's no pictures of the cartridges. There's a lot of info missing that you would really want to see on a sale page, especially for a product that has been on the market for a while. So that was kind of confusing to see, but people have received theirs, and I haven't heard any major complaints. So I guess this one's, safe to pick up if this is what you're looking for. There's AES and MVS versions for batch 2, and both should be shipping around the same time. They claim around February, which is cool. Also, there's an update for the previous version, but it's important to note that these cartridges have built-in Wi-Fi specifically to allow for these updates. So while the update list looks pretty neat and they're already working on bigger updates for the next version, it's very important to note that this isn't something where if you got batch 1, you're out, or you have to send your cart back to have it reprogrammed. All you have to do is connect it to Wi-Fi and have it update, which I think is a really, really awesome feature. I think that's just, marrying the best of the old school, your game's on the cartridge and you own it forever, with the ability to have software updates on it. I like that. I think that's very cool. So if you were interested in picking up a Project Neon cartridge, then check it out. Check out Todd's post for the details and the links and everything. And also, they're working on another game that they're calling Overserved, which is offline and online multiplayer and has up to 8 players with up to 4 able to play locally on one system. So it's kind of neat. It's it's cool to see people embracing older consoles like this, and I'm interested to play the game. I don't know why I still haven't gotten around to doing it. I just hopefully they'll open up or they'll add some more info to their web pages before pre-orders open, so you'll have a better idea of what to expect. I recently posted an interview with Amin from Marseille Inc., which is the company that makes the mCable, MClassic, and those new adapters that recently went up for sale. And this one was pretty interesting. I definitely enjoyed hearing the backstory of how the company started and some of the very cool things they did in the early 2000s. And I also enjoyed the perspective of some use cases I hadn't thought of for these. I still have always kind of said that the MClassic absolutely has its use, and my frustrations have always been with YouTubers who claim that this is the device that will solve all of your problems. For the record, I do realize that it didn't always come across that way. Over the years, especially as RetroRGB has grown, I realized that unless people have watched all of the podcasts, it's impossible for them to get the joke when I'm joking. So it just sounds like I'm making really nasty comments, which sometimes I do, but I make a lot of jokes about the mCable, but mostly what I'm joking about is the people who think it does things it doesn't do. And we actually discussed this in the interview, and I defended them a lot when it came to that stuff, where it was, other people were saying this is what it could do and it doesn't, and they never said it did either. So it was interesting to see that, but the perspectives I also appreciated were things like, what if you just have a really crappy TV? Maybe try this other mode. It's probably going to look terrible on an OLED, but not everybody can afford that. And that's something that's important for me, because while I always hope to have at least one really nice TV, every other TV I own is junk, because if I really want to watch something that's important to me, I go and sit on the one that I spent a bunch of money on almost a decade ago now. And any other time, I just want the cheapest TV possible. So I can absolutely now envision a scenario which some of the modes that I didn't really think had any use for them, yeah, sure, it might be a help, but I still just don't think it's the device for every scenario. And I also just don't understand the Retro Edition at all, even after asking quite a few questions in the interview and trying to get some clarity. So we'll talk a little bit more about this in a second with the next post, but the only other things to note is 1440p is something that I've never gotten working on the mCables until now. And it actually was a commenter who helped me understand this. So, as much as I make comment or jokes about people in the comments, I actually have made a lot of real life friends in the comments and get a ton of amazing info. So thank you so much for taking the time to help me with this. But the problem I was having, and all of us were having, is that you need a device or an EDID spoofer that specifically says it is 1440p 60. So when I was using EDID spoofers and copiers in order to try to make it work in that mode before, one of the mistakes that I made was copying the EDID of a 1440p 144 monitor. And for some reason, the mCable and MClassic and the M devices just drop down to 1080p unless they see exactly 1440p 60. So you could use an EDID programmer and some kind of device in order to create that, or you could just buy a $16 EDID spoofer, which I linked to right here. Thanks again for the commenter who helped with that. Really mean it. That was awesome to find. But I also didn't really see a difference. And in all respect to Marseille, I only really tried this with screenshots on my display. And that's something Amin and I discussed, is that you need to see it on your display to see a difference, which is why so often I will use a good camera with a prime lens to shoot footage of a TV rather than captures. People still make fun of me for this, but I am sticking to my guns in that sometimes that is the absolute proper way to demonstrate what it is that you're seeing. I did that with the 4K Gamer Pro video. I did that a lot whenever I was showing mCable shots, and I do think that it has merit in stuff like this. So while I personally don't think that you should bend over backwards to try to see, or to try to make 1440p work, if you have a display that could definitely take 1440p 60, give it a try. Maybe if you've already invested the money in this, the extra $16 is something that you might, it might be worth it for you, especially if you have a good display. However, there were a bunch of weirdness in this, which I'll get to in a second. I did take some screenshots if you're interested in what these do, and I do think that this will kind of paint a little better picture as to what these products could or couldn't be used for. But my recommendation for your average person is to either get the M Classic or the new Switch edition, which one of the modes is a little bit updated, but the newer versions don't have off switches. So if you bought the original M Classic, you could leave it off, flip it on when you want to see the effect. The green mode is the one that does the smoothing with depth enhancement and stuff like that. The blue mode, I honestly still can't figure out a use for. But, flip on the green mode for games with 3D graphics, see what you think. If you like it, flip it off. Beautiful. The only time it takes is for however long your TV takes to resync. And I think in that scenario, it's a device that I definitely would recommend trying, because maybe this is something that will give you the effect that you're looking for. Check out screenshots from good reviewers to see if that's the effect you're looking for and give it a try. The downside of the Switch edition, though, with no off button, you would have to physically unplug it and replug it every time you wanted it, which for me personally, if I'm syncing into a game, because I'm a nerd, and especially because I do this for a living, I'll take a couple of minutes before I start the game to double check that I'm playing it in the way that I want it to look. And if I have to unplug and replug something versus flip a switch or switch a RetroTink profile, which I've been loving, then I'm way less likely to do that. So I do think overall the recommendation might be the original, but there's some other stuff that might make you not want to buy it. So Mark from My Life in Gaming just posted a good video demoing the M Classic Retro and the M Classic Switch, the two new editions. And he hated them, which is weird to hear that from Mark, because he's usually just the nicest person, and I don't hear him hate things very often at all. In fact, I think in the video title, he called it Bad Beyond Belief. And I absolutely agree in some cases. It is important to note before I get into this that I think I see more of a use case for devices like these in the 4K Gamer Pro than Mark does. But I totally fine agreeing to disagree here, because nothing he said was wrong. I just do see a different perspective. But basically, the versions that he tried were a little bit bugged in that you need to flip the switch after rebooting it at any time, which hopefully the ones that hit the average customer won't do that, because that would be a pretty big issue. But also, as I found in my testing, which the embedded pictures are in my post, it kind of destroys the colors of most things in certain modes. So one of the things Mark found that I didn't in my testing, because I didn't spend the normal deep dive into this that I would normally do, but Mark did. And he found that your source range for your HDMI color space makes a big difference. And maybe that's where I was seeing images that were too dark and too light. Is maybe I had the mismatch on the source. I would actually think a device like this should auto sync with HDMI range pretty well, but obviously if they're having EDIT issues with 1440p, they probably have EDIT issues with the HDMI color space. So that's a big deal, though. You can get, this is not nitpicking here. This is your image is blown out or way too dark, depending on the source and the settings and stuff like that. But Mark definitely found different ways that the switch mode looked good. I actually, on some very terrible LCDs, I know my friends are going to absolutely make fun of me for this, but there are some LCDs that always kind of look blown out to me anyway. They're super cheap. They're the budget, bottom of the barrel ones. Mode 2 can look better, on a real TV that's going to look too dark. But, I see a means point for Mode 1 and Mode 2, but Mode 3 just looks terrible on the Switch. And all of the modes, especially Mode 3 on the retro version, were just embarrassingly bad. Like, to the point where I'm pretty sure something's broken. Amin kind of took the perspective of, we wanted to have that, let's downgrade you to the old CRT look, which I wholeheartedly disagreed with, did so right in the interview. But I don't know. I have more of a feeling that something was actually broken on this mode and they just weren't able to fix it in time for shipping. Now, there's 2 other modes, but once again, you can't turn off any of the new adapters. So, honestly, if I were you, I would watch the My Life in Gaming video first. I would do so knowing that Mark doesn't seem to like a lot of these solutions, but listen to his perspective, because none of his facts are wrong at all. And then maybe listen to the interview with Amin and kind of make your own conclusions as to if these products are for you. If you bought them, was it the wrong choice? If it was the wrong choice, don't blame me, like so many people just love to do in the comments. I never understand that. But yeah, I don't know. My opinion, just even after talking with Amin, my opinion hasn't changed at all. In that, the smoothing depth addition mode of the original mCable and green mode of the M Classic absolutely has its place in some scenarios, but I just could never use it for anything with 2D graphics, and the retro edition I just think's broke. So you check out this in the previous post for screenshots. Check out both of our videos for captures. Obviously, Mark did a much better job because he really did the deep dive. I just kind of threw visual examples up. But yeah, this one, kind of a mess. I really think they should have fixed, at the very least, the HDMI chipset part of things to get the broken stuff, the HDMI color space and the 1440p EDID fixed before releasing a new version. But I also, to be honest, wish that Amin was at the booth when I went to visit in Portland. I think if we'd linked up then, I might have been able to help point him in the right direction for stuff like this. But he kind of seemed to take the perspective of, let's give people something they don't even know they wanted. But I don't think people want this. The retro edition, I mean. I don't think that's something anybody wanted, and nobody who actually sees it in person would be impressed by, especially when there's other solutions out there. So I know I just talked a lot about mCables, but I wanted to try to really add some perspective and also let you know, watch the My Life in Gaming video. Next, we recently talked about a firmware update for some of the original MemCardPros that adds PlayStation 2 compatibility, as well as a bunch of other features that were never thought to be possible on the original version of this. So there's a couple of things to note. Alex's post has all the details as well as all the stuff we talked about last time, but I'm going to concentrate on the most important things that you need to know now, and you could check out all this other stuff if you want the details. First and foremost, if the version of your original MemCardPro says MCP002, then you could just load this new firmware and everything's cool. You get all this functionality for free from a years-old product that I had already thought to be feature complete and did not need any more support, but 8-Bit Mods is giving you this totally free. That said, if you see model MCP001, or if you're a super early adopter and there's no model on there whatsoever, it's not going to be compatible with this firmware update. So you could get a 40% discount on a purchase of either the MemCardPro or MemCardPro 2. That's right. This discount, you could upgrade using this discount, which I think is awesome. I think that's really just bending over backwards for customers. But there's a few things that's required, which I think all of these are fair, by the way, but just my opinion. First, you must provide a copy of your original order in order to qualify for it. You can remove personal data, but the billing name must be present and it must match the new order placed. And the order must clearly show that a MemCardPro was purchased. So I don't know what this means if you bought yours used, but if you purchased it new and if you were an early adopter, then cool. Because it's always the complaint I hear from people. And sometimes it's valid. This time it is not. But the complaint is, oh, this is our punishment for being an early adopter. No, this is your reward for supporting a product that didn't need any updates anyway. But if you bought it used, then you might be out of luck. And I don't have a problem with that. Next, the coupon code that you get will automatically discount MemCardPro or MemCardPro 2s. So that's another incredible thing. You could upgrade to the 2 with this one. You could only use this offer once per order number, which totally fair, and it only applies to the PlayStation MemCardPros, not the other ones. And also, the coupon can only be used on 8bitmods.com. You can't use it through any of the other retailers, but it is compatible if you the coupon code if you bought it from Stone Age Gamer, Castlemania Games, Rondo Games, Classic Game Store, or Dragon Box. So as long as you bought it from an authorized reseller, you could still get this discount. You just got to buy it through 8-Bit Mods, which once again seems totally fair. And you can't combine this with other offers, which is totally fine. So this is this is definitely something that I just can't say enough positive things about. And there's a whole bunch of other features that this comes with as well. So look, if you have the original MemCardPro and it's compatible with the new firmware, you got yourself an awesome, completely free update. And if you don't, if you bought one of the early revs that can't be upgraded to this one, then I still think they did you right by offering a 40% discount on this. So check Alex's post for all the details, but thanks to 8-Bit Mods and Thanos for doing this, because it's just, You didn't have to at all, but it was really cool that you did. Next up, Ken from What's Ken Making recently did a detailed teardown of Mod Retro's Chromatic handheld console. Ken said the post was supposed to be up today, but I needed to record these a bit early, so I'm just using the YouTube video itself as a visual example. And if the post doesn't go up in time, it's my fault, not Ken's. I jumped the gun on this one. But the video is awesome, and there's one very interesting point, at least for me, where Ken found a spot to put a micro SD card slot. And when he soldered on the actual port for it, it recognized it. So this is, a typical Ken video. You get a ton of amazing info. There's, a lot to learn about this, but this was really cool to see in that I wanted a very technical explanation of what's inside of this, and it seems like a pretty good piece of equipment. Now, of course, there is still the ability to press, I think, left and right at the same time that Mako found, and I don't think Ken found any issues with that whatsoever, although I also don't believe he was looking for that. And it did seem to work with his EverDrive, which was the X7, but I also know a few people who said theirs didn't work with the EverDrive. So I'm not sure if there's a detail as to what firmware version of the Chromatic or the EverDrive combined was having the issue, but hopefully all that stuff will get sorted out. And I don't know if you were just interested in the Chromatic. This is definitely a video for you to watch because it answers a lot of questions and kind of gives a cool teardown perspective on everything. But yeah, thanks to Ken for making another awesome video, and hopefully I didn't jump the gun too much on the post. Well, that's it for this week. As always, thanks to everybody who watches, listens, plays nicely in the comments, and especially thank you to anybody who supports in absolutely any way, because it really is you who's keeping all this stuff going. So thank you all so much, and I'll see you next week. This week's Roundup is brought to you by Neo Paradigm Entertainment, connecting Southeast Asian influencers with opportunities in the West.